weird. When I wake again, if it can rightly be said that I sleep here at all, everything in and about my body feels a degree smoother, a tad lighter and airier than before, and the experience makes me imagine the kind of spring Inus, that sprightliness that one might reasonably hope would ensue as a result of having their stomach vacuum pumped of half its guts in a simple and painless outpatient procedure. But also weird, the weirdest and worst bit. I'm in the middle of telling myself how great and better I'm feeling when the actual facts come crashing in and I'm overcome with an undeniable need, intense compulsion to do something to try and put an end to what's going on inside the body of a girl who was never any kind of friend to me at all. This was in our freshman year of high school, and her name was Mary Donaphan, though everybody in our whole high school called her Monkey, and it wasn't on account of she reminded people of monkeys or apes. Nor was it because she looked particularly monk-like, but it's that the word somehow resembled her name in both sound and appearance. To see how it uses 3 of the same graphemes from Mary, and nearly as many from her surname, albeit in a different order. Mary Donaphan. Okay. Monkey, not that it matters. One night I'd been standing near a street lamp and she's on her bike. She'd always get around on a beach cruiser, and it's only a touch past dusk and I've had to puzz in the street lighting up a cig. When the cig finally takes to the flame catches, a flash goes off in the corner of my eye and a car honks, but its driver doesn't slow, swerving instead, the wheels drifting away, skidding to the other lane, leaving her in the center of the street. The whole accident occurs in silence, and yet there's this look, a sick expression that passes across her face, something that tells of her feelings being hurt more than her bones or skin, as if the most harm of it were that her honor's been impugned. And I remember that, in particular, her utter shock and incredulity at her predicament, as she brushed her mousy hair back behind her ears, over and over and over, the action matching her heartbeat, tucking those thin brown strands away so they didn't interfere, as she must have felt, with her ability to comprehend her circumstance, to see her state for exactly what it was, and the idea of a person needing to find a physical gesture to perform, an action that would allow them to focus their mind in a situation such as that, has stayed with me ever since. As I stand on the curb, looking down on her, that bike trapped between her legs and its heart. Upper handle grips, the pair of which had tangled in her sleeves and collarbone during the collision, its pedal embedded deep in the soft belly of her left thigh, its spokes puncturing the flesh of her forearm, and, beneath the whole thing, the back wheels slowly turning, propelled by the push of the slope, the momentum gained, the speed it picked up as the tires worked through the fabric of her favorite shirt and her hair against the rough road. Even in the waning light, I can make out the stain on the white, a sanguine spill beginning to form, a fresh Rorschach on the moon's lit face, and, despite the urge to lend a helping hand or to call 911 on the cell my parents gave to me on that special phone they wanted to know that I was carrying at all times in case of emergency, and at moment, the best I could manage was a half-hearted and vague attempt at prayer. Jesus, says I, and then nothing, and again, and a third time. Jesus, until she raises her arm an inch above the asphalt and, holding the fingers flat, waves to show me that the name isn't Monkey at all, but a sound remarkably like funny, a word whose echoes can still be heard in the ringing in her ears. We weren't friends and she wasn't dead, though in a very real way that's almost impossible to express without a serious risk at sounding crazy or at the minimum ridiculous. The woman I knew in that moment, that teenage girl, is no longer among the living in an existential, metaphysical sort of a way, and in a lot of others. For example, a man and his kid, a little boy, approached the two of us, the spot where we were stranded and sprawled on that hot black strip, and as the man dialed his cell to the rescue in the voice of an actor hired to play a concerned citizen in the TV show, the little kid started at us in a way that could have told anyone paying attention in the vicinity just what kind of man the boy was likely to become in his adulthood. A frowning, fist-clenching bully, no doubt, The kind that gets off on picking on the missteps of the innocent and those he thinks that he could intimidate. A man who knows the importance of finding his weakness in others and exploiting that whenever the chance arises, and a kid leans over his skinny knees and reaches his pointer finger at me to declare, in a tone that would seem practiced to anybody familiar with the artifice of an actor trained to live on stage, "You did it." And the kid was right. Not only right, he was correct. The truth as true as truth can ever possibly get in this life, and that, from that point forward, is the basic condition of my existence, the cross I will carry with me forever, that as the years begin to flow forward and backward at the same, I will never truly be able to make peace or reconciliation with the notion of what's done is done and can't change and is over and wasn't so bad anyway. The phrase, "let it go," simply does not and has not ever meant a fucking thing to me. As the sun sets behind us and the traffic backs up in the dark, I'm standing on the sidelines in a dreamy daze, watching in the glow of the ambulances. Headlights, the men working silently and methodically and quickly to extract the girl's mangled body from her beach cruiser's wreckage, lifting her carefully onto the waiting gurney. Bonham, I see, is careful enough to collect her broken eyeglasses from the edge of the grass, using his fingertips to fold in the temples before fitting the busted spectacles gingerly into his pocket, and that image burns a painful afterglow onto the film of my retinas, a scene that plays back on its endless loop. The blood, the gravel in the cuts, and, most especially, her pale face, the bruising, her eyes opening, blinking, her lips moving to speak or cry or chew her cheeks to ribbons. The first of a million times a single question pops to the front of my skull. What in the fuck is wrong with you, Endorf? And why that is the moment that stayed with me. The one that comes on like an explosion every day. The vision that sticks and repeats in its unchanging, solid state. What should have followed was a series of steps and measures, a process of calls and police questions, of reports filled and insurance paperwork. A lawsuit to resolve the situation to a degree that would at least leave one side satisfied and content to move on, the other destroyed beyond recognition. There should have been a conversation or any contact whatsoever, the occasional text message or email sent from an untraceable account that was open that week, its sole purpose the dispensation of threats to the mental health of its victim. What's most fucked up about all that has happened is that, aside from an email my dad received that was CC'd to everyone else on his contact list asking if Endorf was okay, the next 25 years have revealed nary a peep from her. Not an acknowledgement or an invitation. Maybe a brief sighting in an airport terminal or a crowded restaurant. Just the ordinary interactions of the everyday. Cashiers, clerks, and bank tellers. Faces on the train, a casual wave to the neighbors on the walk or in their yards or over a hedge, a neighbor or three in the course of an evening, but no retribution and no revenge. The utter absence of justice and, from time to time, a passing recognition in the mirror, a fleeting sense of deja vu. In dreams, I'll catch a glimpse of a bike's red, rust-specked, 5-speed handlebars poking from under a sheet, or a pair of Coke bottle glasses in the bathroom trash. Or I'm sitting on a stool at the kitchen counter, a dish towel pressed to the nose. So I'll do what people are taught to do. Breathe deeply, hold it in, climb atop the lid of a coffin to deliver a eulogy that no one seems interested in hearing. Or the dream will find me seated at the dinner table with the family of somebody. We are chewing and smiling and swallowing, our knives and forks squealing and scraping on the china plates. There's an uncomfortable stillness in the room that makes you feel that there's a presence there that isn't welcome and never has been, and the feeling makes its way inside your throat. You notice the looks they exchange. To pass the meal, they ask, do you have kids, pets, hobbies? Any fun plans for the weekend? They ask. And in that moment, a strange feeling stirs within me, and at that same moment, the kid to my right smiles and nods as if to confirm the accuracy of my intuitions. They don't like you, do you see? Says a voice that appears to belong to the kid. And neither should they. Only, I look to the seat that was once occupied, and the chair is gone, along with its place at the table. She now obtains and fills a gratitude journal, So at the moment, I decide to locate the book that's buried somewhere in this house to scribble an item at the top of the page, the heading reading. 1. She no longer thinks in narrative and doesn't need a story at the end of every night in order to sleep. Or to put an easy end to the kinds of days that have made her feel the weight of her 160 pounds as an anchor wrapped and tangled in a chain that's strapped to her ankles, and she wishes for nothing more than the courage, will, or strength to hurl herself headfirst off the bridge to see what it's like on the underside of the river. Back to that notebook. The first and only entry on the gratitude list was a short, concise sentence that offers an assessment of the way that she has become lately, and the next part will go. 2. All that is good in the world, from her view, is found in the present, not the past. Certainly not the future, where things may turn out bad. For example, a dog barking on her street, the sun coming through the curtains, her husband beside her, breathing softly the smell of his skin, her children's eyelids flutter in a dream of someplace warm, a garden, the hum of their baby's breath. In that, she has been successful in training herself to discover joy in the small beauties of being alive, but she no longer needs to keep her mind in constant motion. Our brain is not an endless highway of no stops and turns, and no detours and destinations and exits that allow for the escape of a pressure that builds. Instead, the end is when she begins to find that, on most nights, it shuts itself down, goes to the room that has been reserved for it, and it rests. On the other hand, this morning, NG, while watching the little boys that are her sons playing a game on their devices, the device's screen showing her its face that displays a cartoonish avatar that can kick it, or punch a weapon at the enemy that is the child on the machine seated opposite them, the older boy's lip trembling in an impending fit, his opponent having just dispatched a set of explosives at the feet of his character, reducing the character that was a human being to a set of disembodied legs, and his younger brother, looking at his big brother, crying, "What did I do?" and his hands waving around, a frantic and confused flurry of kicks and blows, and the older son turning his full fury on his sibling, snatching and pulling at the controller, and his hair going on and on and on. And so she will have no choice but to insert her arms in the space that is between the boys, prying her eldest's fist open to remove the clump of his baby brother's locks from the fingers that have a death grip on his property, the youngest, the second in line of succession, crying that he's bleeding. There is blood, she discovers. He is, in fact, actively hemorrhaging, as the older one continues on his tear, pointing at the spot from where his game was pulled, telling her his mom what a poopy face and poop face the youngest was to his sibling, his voice reaching the high whining pitch that she's discovered is his signature, and that his teachers warned would have the result of isolating him from his classmates. The boy's father stands up from his recliner to join her on the carpet of their den to hold aloft a roll of Scotch tape, the universal gesture of "take me to the shit," indicating to his spouse that the situation was at the stage in its trajectory where a grown male's skill, a lesser required to demonstrate a firm hand, to seize command of the crisis, to resolve an issue, to lay the smack on an uppity kid who got himself above his station. When it's finished, she gets back to her task of observing her family from her vantage on the couch, where the oldest returns to the couch and the game in which he'd been engaged, and the littlest retires to a distant corner to work a puzzle and nurse his wounds, while their dad stretches across his chair, relaxing with his newspaper. She resumes the business that had been occupying her at the outset, scrolling on her laptop's browser, shopping, while at the same time maintaining a chat with her sister in a pop-up in the corner, discussing the topic of a diet and the many ways that fat can be turned into an energy source. "Look at the belly, the size of it," her sister's telling her over the M. She looks. A minute passes. She slaps the gut in question, causing her hubby to lower the pages and her youngest to lift his eyes to hers, in a hopes that it will provoke their laughter. She then picks her cell up, holding the phone's camera at arm's length before her, taking selfies, tilting her head in varying poses to discover if there's a certain angle that works best to mask or hide her double chin, selecting and cropping one that gives the impression of a woman 10 years and 40 pounds from who and where and when she is, and sends the image to her sister as evidence, proof that the physical transformation she was proposing to undergo could happen. No more apologies, no excuses. It would be a challenge, she admits that, and yes, a dramatic one at that. A task of biblical proportions, but something's got to give. And besides, it will provide the motivation necessary for her sis, the skinnier, better-looking one of us, will get inspired to join her. She attaches an emoji of two girls dancing in a club, a peace sign, and a winky face. After that, a few more links shared with a mom's group that meets in a park by her office on Fridays to drink wine and exercise. At this point, her guy calls from his position in the living room to announce that he is in want of his after-breakfast ice cream, the dessert that's customary on his days off, a sundae of Neapolitan and whipped cream, her husband's favorite flavors, topped by his usual sprinkling of chocolate syrup and his trademark cherry on top. He is aware, of course, that this request is not well received, at least not by her. And there is a part of her, too, that has learned to regret having introduced him to his ritual suite in the first place. His love affair, however, has yet to reach its consummation, and the act has become something that, on the occasions of his time off, cannot be undone, not without serious consequences to his mood, nor to her sense of order in the universe, the one that would cease to exist should a day pass without its treat. Yes, please would be nice, his answer in response to the query of, does he really have to eat the crap right in front of the boys, in the same room, his butt spilling over the sides of his seat? That is her attempt to impose a barrier between her children and the menace and threat posed by her spouse's predilection for fatty foodstuffs that she regards as the primary obstacle on her road to a body that resembles her daughter's, or, at minimum, a version of her that has had her as liposuctioned and the blubber deposited, piece by piece, in a surgical waste barrel that is emptied every evening in a landfill on the outskirts of town. She understands and knows the nature of the connection between her diet and her husband's ice cream, and the understanding of her understanding on her man's end is a thing that does nothing to dissuade his desire, as, in fact, the awareness of the toll it will exact has the effect of making the experience much richer, tastier. The extra calories and fat grams that come with a bite taken in malice or spite are hard to beat. Not that they're in agreement about that, but he can see her rage and hatred building, mouthful after spoonful, lick upon deliberate slurp upon moan. Of course, her frustration has little to do with her feelings regarding a father's privilege, but the simple fact that he doesn't have the good sense or courtesy to go somewhere else, a separate area or chamber to spare the kids from the visual lesson of their mother's impotence in matters pertaining to their nutrition. He is the family's captain, a figurehead, if one at that, whose orders are to be followed to the letter, and no less, to be carried out swiftly, immediately, and the concept that his wife would even suggest otherwise is, and always will remain, a preposterous impossibility. Her job is to do